Lord Zoran had served the Vrath Empire for 312 years. He had commanded fleets, conquered worlds, and trained generations of warriors in the sacred arts of combat and honor. He had been, by any measure, one of the most accomplished generals in imperial history. His only failure was believing that service deserved loyalty. The rebellion lasted 17 days. It was not a war. It was a purge. Emperor Zorith, who had once called Zoran his most trusted advisor, watched from his obsidian throne as his former general's forces were systematically annihilated. When the last loyalist fell, the emperor issued his verdict. Lord Zoran was executed at dawn. His clan holdings were dissolved. His name was struck from every imperial record. His ancestral armor, worn by 12 generations of Vrath warriors, was melted down and reforged into decorative fixtures for the emperor's personal chambers. His twin daughters watched from the gallery, their manacles cold against their wrists. Kalen and Vex were 17 years old. They had been raised in the shadow of their father's glory, trained in combat and strategy, and the intricate politics of the imperial court. They had never imagined a future without his protection. Now they had no future at all. The emperor's judgment was delivered by a minor functionary who could not meet their eyes. Your father's treason is your inheritance. You are stripped of your clan markings, your ancestral names, and all rights and privileges granted to Vrath citizens. Your armor is forfeit. Your lineage is erased. Kalen's hands curled into fists. Her father's armor had been promised to her since birth, its ceremonial plates inscribed with the names of her ancestors. It was to be her legacy, her identity, her proof that she belonged to something greater than herself. The functionary's guards pried her fingers open and removed the armor piece by piece. Each plate clattered against the stone floor like a death knell. The ceremonial bindings were cut. The ancestral inscriptions were filed away into anonymity. Vex did not resist. She stood motionless, her lava-colored eyes fixed on the empty space where her father had stood before his execution. She had not spoken since the verdict was announced. She would not speak again for many months. The functionary consulted his data slate. Your sentence is exile. You will be transported to Penal Moon Zeta, 9, there to remain until such time as the Empire determines your continued existence is no longer a burden on its resources. He paused. Neither sister asked what that meant. They already knew. The transport vessel was old, its hull scarred by decades of service in the Empire's less honorable missions. Its crew treated the sisters with the professional indifference of cargo handlers. They were loaded into a containment pod, fed twice daily through a nutrition port, and otherwise ignored. The journey took 6 days. Kalen spent them memorizing the cracks in the pod's interior plating. Vex spent them in silence. Penal Moon Zeta, 9 was not a prison. It was a graveyard with atmosphere. The vessel set down on a frozen plain of dirty ice, its landing struts sinking slightly into the permafrost. The containment pod was unsealed. The sisters were guided, not forced, there was no need for force, onto the surface. The cold was immediate and absolute. It was not the cold of Vrath Prime's northern continent, which was sharp and clean and carried the scent of volcanic minerals. This cold was dead, stale, the exhausted exhalation of a world that had long ago surrendered to entropy. Kalen looked around. Gray sky, gray ice, gray horizon in every direction. No structures, no vegetation, no movement, just the dying whisper of the wind across an empty world. Our supplies, she said to the transport captain. Our survival equipment. Where is it? The captain did not meet her eyes. He had already turned away, his massive frame blocking the hatch of his vessel. Your sentence does not include supplies, he said. Your sentence is exile. Nothing more. The hatch sealed. The transport vessel's engines hummed to life. It lifted from the ice, its landing struts retracting, its hull ascending slowly into the gray sky. Kalen watched it go. Beside her, Vex stood motionless, her breath forming small clouds of vapor that were immediately torn away by the wind. The vessel became a speck, then a memory, then nothing. Kalen looked at her sister. At her empty hands, her bare shoulders, her face frozen in an expression of absolute, impenetrable silence. We need to move, Kalen said. We need to find shelter. We need to. She stopped. There was nothing to find. No shelter. No supplies. No hope. She looked at her own hands. Her father's armor was gone, its weight and warmth replaced by the indifferent cold of a dead moon. Her clan markings had been filed away, the intricate spirals of the stone render lineage reduced to smooth, anonymous flesh. Her name, her identity, Her entire existence as a Vrath warrior and a daughter of Lord Zoran and a citizen of the Empire, all of it erased. She was 17 years old. She had no armor, no weapons, no shelter, no future. Beside her, Vex sank slowly to her knees in the snow. Her lava-colored eyes were fixed on the empty sky, following the invisible path of the transport vessel that had abandoned them. Kaelin stood motionless for a long moment. Then she removed her own coat, threadbare and inadequate, and draped it over her sister's shoulders. "We need to move," she repeated. Her voice was steady. "We need to find shelter. We need to survive." She did not know if she believed her own words. She did not know if survival was possible or desirable or worth the effort required to achieve it. But her sister was freezing, and Kaelin had a coat. She took Vex's hand and pulled her to her feet. Together, the last daughters of the Stonerender clan walked into the gray, empty horizon, leaving nothing behind but footprints that the wind was already erasing. The Empire had forgotten them. They had not forgotten themselves. Not yet. Leo Chen had been on Frostfall for 63 days. He was not supposed to be here. His contract was for 30 days, standard rotation, plenty of time to repair the weather monitoring station and return to Earth before the winter storms made the transit lane impossible. But the station's problems were deeper than the initial diagnostics suggested, and the storms had arrived early, and now he was stuck on a frozen moon at the edge of nowhere with 3 days of supplies left and a growing certainty that the replacement crew was not coming. He was counting the hours until his return flight. He had counted them so many times that the numbers had lost all meaning. The station's exterior cameras showed nothing but ice and darkness. The same ice and darkness they had shown for 63 days. Leo checked them anyway. It was part of his routine, the careful cycle of diagnostics and maintenance that kept him from thinking about the weight of the empty sky. He almost missed them. 2 figures, huddled against the station's outer wall. Their outlines were blurred by frost and shadow, their heat signatures barely registering against the ambient cold. If he had checked the feed 5 minutes later, or 5 minutes earlier, or if his attention had drifted for even a moment, Leo was at the airlock before his conscious mind had finished processing what he saw. The cold hit him like a physical impact. Frostfall's atmosphere was thin and bitter, its wind a constant, hungry presence that sought out every gap in his thermal layers. He had learned to respect it over 63 days. He had never learned to ignore it. The figures were closer than the cameras suggested. A few meters from the station's outer wall, curled together in a futile attempt to share body heat. 2 of them. Sisters, he guessed, though it was hard to tell through the frost coating their features. Young. Too young to be alone on a dead moon with no shelter and no supplies. Their clothing was inadequate, thin garments designed for a climate far milder than this one. Their skin, where visible, was the color of cooled lava, patterned with remnants of what looked like ceremonial markings that had been deliberately, brutally filed away. Their hands were bare. Their feet were bare. They had been here for hours, at least. Possibly days. Leo's training, which had been drilled into him through years of corporate safety protocols and liability avoidance seminars, produced a clear and immediate instruction. Report the individuals to local authorities. Do not engage. Do not offer assistance. Do not assume responsibility. Leo's training could go freeze itself on this godforsaken moon. He removed his thermal coat, the heavy-duty industrial model rated for Frostfall's worst conditions, and wrapped it around the larger of the 2 sisters. She flinched at his touch, her lava-colored eyes snapping open with the sudden terror of prey that expects a predator's jaws. "It's okay," Leo said. His voice was hoarse from disuse, the words rough and clumsy in his throat. He had not spoken Galactic Common in weeks. He was not sure he remembered how. "It's okay," he repeated. "I'm here to help." The sister stared at him. Her body was rigid with cold and fear, her massive hands curled into fists that could have crushed his skull with a single squeeze. She did not move. Leo looked at the other sister, the smaller one, still curled against the larger's side. Her eyes were closed. Her breath was so shallow it was almost invisible. "We need to get inside," he said. "Both of you. Now." He reached out his hand, palm up, fingers open. The universal gesture of non-threat, practiced by every species that had ever needed to communicate across the barriers of language and culture and fear. The larger sister looked at his hand, at his face, at the door of the station behind him. Her massive hand, trembling with cold and exhaustion, slowly uncurled from its defensive fist. Her fingers, bare and blue-tinged, reached out and touched his palm. Inside, she whispered. Her voice was barely audible, scraped raw by hours of silent endurance. Please. Leo closed his fingers around hers and pulled. The airlock cycled. The inner door opened. The station's warmth, which Leo had spent 63 days taking for granted, rushed out to meet them. The larger sister stumbled through the threshold, half carrying her unconscious sibling. Leo guided them to the small common area, the only space in the station large enough to accommodate their massive frames. He grabbed every blanket, every thermal pack, every emergency heat sheet in his supply locker, and wrapped them both in layers of borrowed warmth. The larger sister watched him work, her lava-colored eyes tracking his every movement with the wary stillness of a creature that has learned not to trust kindness. I am Kaylin, she said. Her voice was steadier now, though her body still trembled beneath the blankets. My sister is Vex. She does not speak. Leo nodded. He did not ask why. He did not ask how they had come to be on this frozen moon, or who had stripped them of their markings, or what crimes they had committed to deserve such absolute abandonment. Those questions could wait. Those questions might never need to be asked. My name is Leo, he said. I have soup. It's not very good, but it's hot. Can you eat? Kaylin looked at him. At his ordinary face, his ordinary voice, his ordinary offer of ordinary food. At the thermal coat still wrapped around her shoulders, heavy with his body heat. Yes, she said. I can eat. Leo prepared the soup. It was, as promised, not very good. Rehydrated vegetables and protein flakes. The same meal he had eaten every day for 63 days. But it was hot, and it was nourishing, and it was offered without condition or expectation. Kaylin ate slowly, methodically, her massive hands careful with the small bowl. Between spoonfuls, she used her free hand to stroke her sister's hair, a gentle, rhythmic motion that seemed to calm them both. Leo sat across from her, sipping his own soup, watching the storm rage against the station's reinforced windows. The transport will come in 3 days, he said. To take me back to Earth. There will be room for 2 more. Kaylin's hand paused in its gentle motion, her lava-colored eyes fixed on his face. Why? She asked. The same question her sister would ask, days later, when she finally found her voice. Why would you help us? Leo considered the question. He thought about his training, his safety protocols, his carefully cultivated career as a man who did not take risks and did not make trouble and did not invite strangers into his home. He thought about 2 figures huddled against a frozen wall, their breath barely visible in the killing cold, waiting to die because no one had ever taught them to hope. Because you were freezing, he said. And I had a coat. Kaylin did not respond. Her hand resumed its gentle motion, stroking her sister's hair. Her lava-colored eyes, still wary, still watchful, held something new, something that looked, to Leo's exhausted and uncertain gaze, very much like the beginning of trust. Outside, the storm continued its patient assault on the station's walls. Inside, 3 people sat together in the warm glow of the emergency lights, sharing soup and silence and the fragile possibility of survival. The transport would come in 3 days. Leo counted the hours, as he had for 63 days. This time, the numbers meant something different. The first 3 days were measured in silence. Kaylin and Vex occupied the corner of Leo's quarters farthest from the door. They sat with their backs against the wall, their massive frames pressed together, their lava-colored eyes tracking every movement Leo made with the focused intensity of prey animals that had learned to expect predators in every shadow. Leo did not approach them. He did not demand explanations or gratitude or conversation. He simply went about his routine, as if 2 exiled princesses huddled in his corner were an ordinary feature of station life. He woke at 0600. He performed his morning diagnostics on the weather monitoring array. He ate his rehydrated vegetable paste while reviewing the previous day's data. He spent 4 hours in the equipment bay, repairing a damaged sensor module. He ate his evening ration. He reviewed the next day's maintenance schedule. He slept. Each time he placed food within their reach, 2 trays, identical to his own, left on the edge of the workbench closest to their corner. Each time, Kaylin waited until he had turned his back before retrieving the trays and distributing the contents between herself and her silent sister. The food was always consumed. The trays were always returned, clean and neatly stacked, before Leo woke the next morning. On the second day, Vex shifted her position. Not much, a few centimeters away from her sister's side, her massive hands resting on her knees instead of curled against her chest. Her lava-colored eyes, which had been fixed on Leo's every movement with unwavering vigilance, now occasionally drifted to the viewport and the gray, empty sky beyond. Leo noticed. He said nothing. On the third day, the transport was delayed. The message came through the station's emergency channel, a crackling transmission from the corporate logistics office on Frostfall's main outpost. Winter storms had intensified across the northern hemisphere. All flights were grounded indefinitely. No estimated resupply date. No estimated evacuation date. Leo's already depleted supplies would need to stretch further than planned. Behind him, Kaylin's lava-colored eyes tracked his movements with renewed intensity. Her massive hands, resting on her knees, slowly curled into fists. Leo did not turn around. He did not acknowledge her attention. He simply continued his work, patient and methodical, as if the universe had not just informed him that his last chance to leave this frozen moon had evaporated into the gray, indifferent sky. On the fourth day, Vex spoke. Her voice was barely audible, scraped raw by months of silence and the corrosive cold of penal moon Zeta 9. The words emerged in halting, broken galactic common, each syllable a visible effort. Why? Leo looked up from his diagnostic console. His expression was neutral, patient, the same expression he had worn for 3 days of silent coexistence. Vex's lava-colored eyes met his. Her massive hands, still curled into fists, trembled slightly against her knees. Why help? She forced out. Why not report? Why food? Why coat? She paused, her chest heaving with the effort of speech. Her sister, Kaylin, watched her with an expression of frozen wonder, as if witnessing a miracle she had long since stopped believing possible. Why? Vex whispered. We are nothing. No clan. No name. No value. Empire, erase us. Why you not erase? Leo set down his diagnostic tool. He turned his chair to face the sisters directly, his ordinary face serious but calm. He considered the question for a long moment. Not because he needed time to formulate an answer, but because he wanted Vex to understand that her question deserved genuine consideration. Because you were freezing, he said. And I had a coat. Vex stared at him. Her massive hands slowly uncurled from their defensive fists. That is not strategic, she said. The words were still halting, still effortful, but there was something new in her voice. Something that might have been, in a being less conditioned to absolute emotional suppression, the beginning of confusion. No, Leo agreed. It's not strategic. It's not tactical. It's not efficient or logical, or any of the other things the Empire probably taught you to value. He paused. It's just what you do when someone is freezing, and you have a coat. Kaylin spoke for the first time in 3 days. Her voice was steadier than her sister's, but no less raw. The Empire taught us that kindness is weakness, she said. That compassion is a flaw to be eliminated. That the only rational response to suffering is to ignore it, or exploit it, or cause it yourself if doing so advances your position. I know, Leo said. I've met the Empire. He did not elaborate. He did not need to. Kaylin looked at him. At his ordinary face, his ordinary voice, his ordinary refusal to be anything other than what he appeared to be. You are not what we expected, she said. What did you expect? She considered the question. A predator. A manipulator. Someone who helps only to create obligation, who gives only to demand repayment, who protects only to control. She paused. Someone like us. Leo nodded slowly. I understand why you'd expect that. He paused. But I'm not like you. No, Kaylin said. You are not. The silence that followed was different from the silence of the first 3 days. It was not wary or watchful, or filled with the expectation of violence. It was contemplative, almost peaceful. Vex spoke again, her voice still halting but growing stronger with each word. What happens now? Leo looked at the viewport, at the gray, storm-choked sky, at the invisible transport that was not coming to rescue him. Now we wait, he said. The storms will pass eventually. The transport will come. We have enough supplies for another 2 weeks if we ration carefully. He paused. And if we run out before the transport arrives, well, we'll figure something out. Figure something out, Vex repeated. Her pronunciation was improving with practice. This is human strategy? This is human stubbornness, Leo said. It's not as elegant as strategy, but it works more often than you'd think. Vex's face, which had been frozen in an expression of absolute emotional suppression for as long as Kaylin could remember, underwent a subtle transformation. Her mandibles twitched. The corners of her mouth, carefully neutral for months, shifted upward by a fraction of a millimeter. It was not a smile. Vrath did not smile. But it was something close enough that Kalen felt her chest constrict with a sensation she had thought the Empire had successfully eradicated. Hope. 2 weeks, Kalen said. And then if the transport does not come? Leo shrugged. Then I guess you're stuck with me. He turned back to his diagnostic console, his expression once again neutral and patient. But his movements were slower, more deliberate, as if he was giving the sisters time to process his words without the pressure of his attention. Kalen looked at her sister. Vex looked back at her. Neither spoke. Neither needed to. For the first time since their father's execution, since the shattering of their ancestral armor, since the cold embrace of Penal Moon Zeta 9, the sisters shared a single, coherent thought. Perhaps we are not as alone as we believed. Vex did not speak again that day, but her massive hands, resting on her knees, were no longer curled into fists. Leo noticed. He said nothing. Some things did not need to be spoken to be understood. The Vrath Imperial ship descended through Frostfall's gray atmosphere like a blade falling toward flesh. Its hull was polished obsidian, its markings the crimson of the Emperor's personal fleet. Leo Chen watched it land from the station's main viewport, his expression unchanged. Beside him, Kalen's massive hands had curled into fists. Her lava-colored eyes held the hollow resignation of someone who had seen this coming since the day she was left to die. They found us, she said. Her voice was steady, but her knuckles were white. I know. You should hide. They will not harm a human civilian. I know. If you stand between them and their quarry, they will destroy you without hesitation. You have no weapons, no combat training, no authority. I know. Kalen looked at him. Her eyes, so carefully emptied of hope, held something that might have been desperation. Then why are you still standing here? Leo did not answer immediately. He continued watching the Imperial ship, its landing struts sinking into the permafrost. Because someone has to, he said. The agents who emerged were 3. Their ancestral armor was polished to a mirror finish. They moved with the synchronized efficiency of predators who had never encountered prey capable of resistance. The lead agent, a scarred veteran named Vorath, scanned the station's exterior. 2 heat signatures inside. The retrieval would be quick, quiet, professionally executed. He did not expect the station's airlock to open before his team reached it. He did not expect a human to emerge, unarmed and unarmored, and position himself directly in their path. He did not expect that human to look at 3 elite Imperial executioners and say, with absolute calm, "They're under my protection." Voratha's mandibles twitched in amusement. You are a civilian engineer. You have no authority here. Step aside, and your interference will be forgiven. No, Leo said. Voratha's mandibles stilled. No. They're under my protection. You're not taking them. The subordinate agents began to laugh. It was the laughter of professionals encountering an unexpected absurdity. Vorath did not laugh. He had learned that confidence in the face of overwhelming force was rarely stupidity. Identify yourself. Leo Chen. Engineer. Employee identification 4472 Alpha Niner. Voratha's data slate pinged with his credentials scan. He glanced at it, expecting to confirm civilian status and proceed. The ping was not a confirmation. It was a flag. Subject, Chun Leo. Status, civilian contractor current. Previous service, Terran Expeditionary Force, 7th Battalion. Combat record, New Providence Incident. Decorations, Survivor's Cross, Distinguished Service Medal. Notes, personal acquaintance of Admiral Alara Vance. Voratha's mandibles went very, very still. New Providence. The incident that had shattered a moon, and with it, 3 centuries of Vrath tactical doctrine. The name that haunted every Imperial strategist. And this engineer, this ordinary man in a civilian thermal coat, had been there. You are a survivor of New Providence, Vorath said. It was not a question. Yes, Leo said. I was a private first class. I helped recalibrate the targeting systems on the Defiant after the demonstration. He paused. Admiral Vance and I served together for 3 years before I resigned my commission. The silence that followed was absolute. The wind continued its patient assault on the frozen plain, but the Imperial agents stood motionless, their laughter forgotten. Vorath considered his options. The retrieval order was direct from the Emperor's command council. The fugitives were confirmed targets, but the human standing before him was not a civilian engineer. He was a decorated combat veteran with personal connections to the most strategically significant human military commander in known space. His death would generate diplomatic repercussions Vorith was not authorized to evaluate, and the Defiant was still in service. Its 12 reality check projectiles were still operational. Its captain was still fiercely protective of her former subordinates. Vorith's mandibles clicked once, a sharp, involuntary sound. "We will consult with our superiors," he said. "Remain here." Leo nodded. "I'll be here." Vorith turned and walked back to the ship. His subordinates followed in confused silence. The boarding ramp retracted. The vessel lifted from the permafrost and ascended into the gray sky. Kaelin appeared in the open airlock, her massive frame silhouetted against the warm light within. "What did you say to them?" she asked. Leo did not turn around. He continued watching the Imperial ship disappear into the clouds. "The truth. That you're under my protection. That is not the truth. That is a declaration of intent. It has no legal weight, no diplomatic authority." "It has my name on it," Leo said. "That's enough." Kaelin was silent for a long moment. Her lava-colored eyes, fixed on the empty sky, held something that might have been wonder. "You told them who you are. What you did. Who you know. You used your history as a weapon." "I used my history as a shield," Leo said. "There's a difference." "Is there? I hope so." He turned away from the viewport and walked back into the station. Kaelin watched him go, her massive hands slowly uncurling from their defensive fists. The Imperial ship transmitted its report to Vrath Prime. The Emperor's Command Council debated the diplomatic implications and issued a new directive. Retrieval operations suspended. Subject fugitives remain at current location under informal human protection. Do not engage. Vorith received the order at the edge of Frostfall's atmosphere. He read it twice, his mandibles working silently, then transmitted a single-word acknowledgement. Understood. He did not ask why the Empire had retreated from a confrontation with a single unarmed human. He already knew the answer. Some walls are not made of stone or steel. Some walls are made of names and histories, and the patient refusal of ordinary people to move aside. Leo Chen was not a soldier anymore. He was not a hero or a strategist or a diplomat. He was just an engineer with a thermal coat and a stubborn conviction that some things were worth standing in front of. It was the Empire had just discovered more than enough. The Vrath Empire never officially withdrew its claim on Kaelin and Vex. It simply stopped mentioning them. The retrieval order remained in the Imperial database, marked pending diplomatic consultation, with a timestamp that grew older with each passing cycle. No further ships arrived at Frostfall. No further agents demanded their return. Kaelin understood. They were not forgiven. They were not pardoned. They were simply no longer worth the cost of recovering. The storms eventually passed. The transport eventually arrived. Leo Chen booked 3 tickets and waited for them to decide. Kaelin stood at the station's viewport, watching the transport descend. Beside her, Vex was silent. "We could stay," Kaelin said. "This station is abandoned now. No one would know." Vex did not respond. They both knew that staying on Frostfall was not survival. It was a slower, lonelier death. "We could go with him," Kaelin said. "To Earth." Vex turned to look at her sister. "He is not our father. He will not keep us." "I know. He is not our empire. He will not protect us." "I know. He is not our species. He will not understand us." "I know." Kaelin paused. "But he is the only being in the galaxy who has ever given us a choice. I think I would like to choose him." Vex was silent for a long moment. Then she nodded once. "Then we choose him." They boarded the transport together. Leo shifted his bag to the floor, creating space on the bench beside him, and returned to his contemplation of the clouds. The journey to Earth took 6 days. Chen's workshop was a converted warehouse in the orbital industrial district of New Houston. Bare metal walls, stained floors, a climate control system that overheated on Tuesdays. It was not what Kaelin had expected. It was better. Leo introduced them to his colleagues. No one asked why 2 Vrath princesses were standing in their workshop. No one questioned their credentials. They simply accepted them. Kaelin was given a workbench in the corner, near a viewport overlooking Earth. Vex was given the bench beside hers. They were given tools, tasks, coffee. "This is terrible," Vex said after her first sip. "Yes," Leo agreed. "You get used to it." Vex took another sip. The days became weeks. The weeks became months. Kaelin discovered she had a talent for diagnosing propulsion problems by sound alone. Vex discovered a gift for precision calibration. Maya came to Kaelin with difficult problems. Santos sought Vex's opinion. Junior mechanics gathered around their benches to watch them work. No one whispered about their size. No one avoided their gaze. No one calculated their political value. They were simply mechanics. Good ones. Valued ones. Kaylin learned to save Leo a seat at lunch. She had spent 23 years sitting alone, eating alone, existing in the margins of crowded rooms. Now she saved a place for him every day, without thinking about it, because that was what people did when they belonged to each other. Vex learned to argue about engine calibrations. Leo did not want compliance. He wanted solutions. He wanted her to challenge his assumptions. "You're wrong about the phase alignment," Vex said one afternoon. "It needs 4 degrees, not 3. Leo made the adjustment. The engine smoothed. "Huh, you're right." Vex stared at him. No one had ever said those words to her. "You get used to it," Kaylin said quietly. "Being right, being heard, being valued." Vex picked up her diagnostic tool. 3-degree offset, she muttered. "Amateur." Leo almost smiled. 4 degrees. Noted. 3 years passed. The walls remained bare metal. The floor stayed stained. The climate control still overheated on Tuesdays. But something had changed. Kaylin had changed. Vex had changed. They had not become warriors or diplomats or political symbols. They had not reclaimed their clan markings or restored their ancestral names. They had not sought revenge against the father who had abandoned them, the empire that had erased them. They had become mechanics. They drank terrible coffee and argued about engine calibrations and saved seats at lunch for people they considered family. One evening, Leo found Kaylin at her bench, staring out at Earth. "You ever think about going back?" he asked. "To Vrath Prime. To your people." Kaylin was silent for a long moment. Her massive hands rested on the cold metal. "This is my people," she said. "This is my home." Leo nodded. He stood beside her, sharing the view, sharing the silence, sharing the quiet certainty of belonging. Behind them, Vex sat at her own bench, her lava-colored eyes fixed on a diagnostic readout. Her massive fingers traced the familiar contours of her calibration tools. She did not look up. She did not need to. The home that was not a cage had become the only home she had ever truly known. She never left. Neither of them did. Somewhere in the orbital industrial district of New Houston, on a planet the Empire had never conquered and never would, 2 exiled princesses sat at their workbenches and saved seats at lunch and lived the quiet, ordinary lives they had been told they did not deserve. They were not warriors. They were not diplomats. They were not political symbols or strategic assets or cautionary tales. They were mechanics. They were family. They were home. And they never left.